I'm Amber, 29 years old, and last month my grandfather left me his entire estate worth over $2 million. The day after the funeral, my mother Patricia demanded I sign it over to her. When I refused, all hell broke loose. This morning, I received a text about an important family meeting. Walking into my childhood home, I froze. My mother, siblings, stepfather, and two men in expensive suits stared at me. Amber, my mother said with a cold smile, meet our lawyers. I wasn't prepared for what happened next. If you're watching this, drop a comment telling me where you're from. Hit that like button and subscribe to see how I handled this unexpected ambush. My grandfather Harold wasn't just family, he was my hero. While most kids had posters of pop stars on their walls, I had a framed photo of my grandfather standing proudly in front of his first hardware store. He built his business from nothing, starting with a small loan and transforming it into a chain of stores across 3 states. Nothing worth having comes easy, Amber, he'd tell me, his voice always carrying that perfect mix of warmth and wisdom. My mother Patricia, on the other hand, never understood the value of hard work. As Grandpa's only daughter, she grew up expecting everything to be handed to her. Even as a child, I noticed how she'd roll her eyes whenever he talked about building character through adversity. My earliest memories include her explosive shopping sprees, the living room overflowing with bags bearing designer logos, followed by hushed arguments between her and my grandfather about money. By the time I was 12, our family finances were a disaster. Mom cycled through credit cards like seasons, maxing one out before moving to the next. My stepfather Craig enabled her, partly because he benefited from her spending and partly because confronting her led to explosive fights. They remortgaged our house twice before I graduated high school. Meanwhile, Grandpa took a special interest in me. He noticed how I'd linger in his office during family gatherings, fascinated by the ledgers and business reports scattered across his desk. When I was 13, he started bringing me to his main store on Saturdays. "You've got a good head for business, kiddo," he said one afternoon as I helped him review inventory reports. I'd just pointed out a discrepancy in the quarterly orders. "You notice things others miss." Those Saturdays became sacred. He taught me how to analyze profit margins, negotiate with suppliers, and most importantly, how to treat employees with respect. "Your business is only as good as the people who run it when you're not there," he'd say. When it came time for college, Grandpa sat me down for a serious talk. "What are you thinking, Amber?" he asked. "Business administration," I replied without hesitation. "With a minor in accounting." His eyes crinkled with pride. "Smart choice. Education is the one thing nobody can take from you." He offered to pay my tuition in full, but my mother intercepted. Suddenly, she was calling him daily, complaining about their mortgage, Rachel's medical bills, minor and mostly cosmetic, and Jason's special needs. He wanted a car for his 16th birthday. The money for my education mysteriously became family funds. I took out student loans instead and worked part-time at a local bookstore. Grandpa would visit me there, pretending to browse the business section while slipping me envelopes of cash. "Don't tell your mother," he'd whisper. "This is between us." As his health began to decline, our conversations grew more serious. I was 27 when he was diagnosed with congestive heart failure. During one hospital visit, after the nurses had left us alone, he gripped my hand with surprising strength. "I've watched how you handle money, Amber," he said. "You're the only one in this family who understands its value." "I learned from the best," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Patricia." He sighed heavily. "Your mother has never understood that money isn't just for spending. It's responsibility. It's security. It's opportunity." He looked at me with intense clarity. "I've made arrangements. You'll be taken care of." "Grandpa, don't talk like that. You're going to be fine." "Listen to me," he insisted. "When the time comes, there will be pressure. Standing your ground won't be easy." I promised him I would honor whatever decisions he'd made, though I didn't fully understand what he meant then. In his final months, he shared stories I'd never heard before about my mother's teenage years, how she'd stolen from his wallet, forged his signature on checks, and once emptied a savings account he'd set up for her college fund to buy a car. I failed her somehow, he confessed during our last real conversation. Gave her too much, perhaps, or not enough of what truly mattered. He squeezed my hand. But you, Amber, you turned out just right. A week later, he slipped into a coma. 3 days after that, surrounded by family, Harold James Matthews took his final breath. I felt a piece of myself leave with him. The reading of the will took place 2 weeks after the funeral. We gathered in Mr. Peterson's law office, a wood-paneled room that smelled of leather and old books. My mother arrived dressed in designer black, her eyes hidden behind large sunglasses despite the dim interior lighting. Rachel and Jason sat on either side of her, with Craig hovering protectively behind them. I sat alone across the table. Mr. Peterson cleared his throat and began reading. The first few minutes covered small bequests, charitable donations, items for distant relatives, a generous pension for his longtime housekeeper. Nothing surprising. Then came the bombshell. And to my granddaughter, Amber Nicole Matthews, I leave the remainder of my estate, including my business holdings, investment portfolios, real estate properties, and personal effects, with the exception of items specifically designated to others in this document. The silence that followed was deafening. I sat frozen, the magnitude of what had just happened washing over me in waves. Then my mother ripped off her sunglasses. "This is a mistake," she hissed. "Read it again." Mr. Peterson adjusted his glasses. "There's no mistake, Mrs. Carter. Your father was very specific in his instructions." "That's impossible." She slammed her hand on the table. "I'm his daughter. His only child." "Mom, please," I whispered, aware of the lawyer's uncomfortable expression. "Don't you, Mom, me," she snapped. "You knew about this, didn't you? You manipulated him when he was sick and vulnerable." Rachel jumped in, her voice trembling with either emotion or performance. I couldn't tell which. "Grandpa wouldn't do this to us. He loved us all equally." Jason remained silent, staring at his hands. Mr. Peterson interjected firmly. "Mr. Matthews was of sound mind when he updated his will 6 months ago. He was very clear about his wishes." My mother's face contorted with rage. 6 months ago? When he was already sick. This proves it was manipulation. The meeting dissolved into chaos after that. My mother threatened to contest the will. Craig made vague comments about family loyalty. Rachel sobbed dramatically. Throughout it all, I sat in stunned silence, the weight of my grandfather's trust pressing down on me. In the parking lot afterward, my mother cornered me against my car. "This is a simple fix, Amber," she said, her voice suddenly calm and reasonable. "Just transfer everything to me, and I'll make sure everyone gets their fair share." I looked into her eyes, so similar to mine in color, but lacking any warmth. "I need time to process this, Mom." "What's there to process?" Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "It's family money. It belongs to all of us." "That's not what Grandpa wanted." Her expression hardened. "You have no idea what he wanted. I was his daughter for 52 years. You were just a distraction in his old age." Those words stung more than I wanted to admit. "I'm not making any decisions right now. Don't be selfish, Amber. Your brother needs college tuition. Rachel's drowning in debt. Craig and I are behind on the mortgage again." "I thought you paid off the mortgage with the money Grandpa gave you last year?" She waved dismissively. "Things happen. Expenses come up. Like the brand new Mercedes in their driveway, I thought but didn't say." The next few days brought a barrage of calls and texts. Rachel called me a greedy bitch in a family group chat. Craig left voicemails about doing the right thing. Friends of my mother's, women I'd known since childhood, sent messages expressing their disappointment in my character. Jason was the only one who approached me differently. He showed up at my apartment 3 days after the will reading, hands in his pockets, looking younger than his 18 years. "I don't care about the money," he said quietly, "but Mom's on the warpath. I've never seen her like this. I'm sorry you're caught in the middle." "I meant it." He shrugged. "Just wanted to warn you. She's not going to let this go." A week later, my mother arranged a casual family dinner. The moment I arrived, she launched into a prepared speech about family unity and generational wealth. "Your grandfather built his business for all of us," she insisted, cutting into her steak with precise movements. "He never intended for one person to control everything." "Then why did he write the will that way?" I asked. "Because you manipulated him," Rachel snapped. "We all know you were his favorite. You used that." "That's not true." My voice came out smaller than I intended. "Then prove it," my mother said. "Sign the money over to me, and I'll distribute it fairly." "I can't do that." "Can't or won't?" Craig interjected. "Both." I stood up, dinner untouched. I promised Grandpa I would respect his wishes. His wishes were for the family to be taken care of. My mother shouted as I headed for the door. "And I intend to honor that," I replied. "Just not the way you're demanding." I left with their angry voices following me down the driveway. That night, alone in my apartment, I cried for hours. Not because I doubted my decision, but because I was losing my family in the process of honoring my grandfather's last wish. The weeks following the will reading were some of the hardest of my life. What started as direct confrontation evolved into something more insidious, a coordinated campaign to break me down emotionally. My phone became a portal for guilt and manipulation. Aunts I barely spoke to called to tell me how disappointed they were. Cousins sent texts asking why I hated the family. Even my mother's church friends reached out, quoting scripture about honoring parents and the evils of greed. "Family takes care of family" became my mother's mantra, repeated in daily voicemails when I stopped answering her calls. Rachel took a different approach, weaponizing our shared childhood. "Remember when Mom sold her engagement ring to pay for your braces?" she texted one morning. I did remember, and also remembered that Grandpa had given Mom the money for those braces, which she'd spent on a spa weekend before being forced to sell the ring. The pressure came from unexpected directions, too. My mother somehow got my coworkers' contact information and began calling my office. My boss, Barbara, called me into her office after the third day of these disruptions. "Amber, is everything okay at home?" she asked, concern evident in her expression. I explained the situation as professionally as I could. "Take some personal days if you need them," she offered. "And let reception know not to put your mother's calls through anymore." Social media became unbearable. My mother and Rachel posted vague statuses about toxic family members and financial abuse of elders. Distant relatives commented with supportive emojis, never knowing they were taking sides in a battle they didn't understand. I made the mistake of checking my mother's Instagram one evening and found photos of her shopping for a new car. "Treating myself through the grief #self-care," read the caption. This was the same week she'd texted me about being unable to pay utility bills. My suspicions grew, so I did something I never thought I'd do. I asked Mr. Peterson for records of my grandfather's financial support to my mother over the years. What I discovered was staggering. In the 5 years before his death, Grandpa had given my mother over $300,000, supposedly for house payments, medical bills, and education costs. The amounts had increased dramatically in his final year. "Your grandfather was very generous with your mother," Mr. Peterson noted diplomatically. "Some might say, excessively so." That night, I received the most disturbing call yet from Craig, his words slightly slurred from alcohol. "You think you're so smart," he growled. "Little Miss Perfect with her business degree. Your mother is having panic attacks because of you." "I'm sorry she's struggling," I said, trying to remain calm. "No, you're not. You've always been selfish. Harold spoiled you rotten." "That's not fair." "No, what's not fair?" "Your mother deserves that money. She had plans for it." "What plans?" I asked before I could stop myself. He laughed bitterly. The house in Naples, for starters. We put a deposit down 6 months ago when the old man's doctor gave us the timeline. I felt physically ill. You were spending his money before he was even dead? It was going to be ours anyway, he slurred. Until you got involved. The call ended with veiled threats about legal consequences and family secrets. I sat in my darkened apartment, shaking. For the first time, I considered giving in, just to end the nightmare. The money wasn't worth this emotional torture. Ethan found me like that, curled on the couch in the dark. My boyfriend had used his emergency key after I'd missed our dinner date and wasn't answering texts. Talk to me, he said, pulling me into his arms. All of it. I poured everything out, the inheritance, the pressure, Craig's threatening call. Maybe I should just give them what they want, I concluded, exhausted. Ethan listened without interrupting, his expression growing increasingly concerned. When I finished, he took my hands in his. Amber, this isn't just about money anymore, he said gently. This is emotional abuse. And from what you've told me about your grandfather, giving in would betray everything he was trying to protect you from. But my family is showing you exactly why Harold made the choice he did. His voice was firm but kind. He knew this would happen. He was preparing you for it. That night marked a turning point. Ethan helped me set up an appointment with Samantha Reed, a lawyer friend of his who specialized in estate disputes. Just to understand your options, he insisted. Samantha's advice was clear. Document everything, restrict contact, and prepare for a potential legal battle. Based on what you've told me, she said during our consultation, your mother may be planning something more aggressive than just guilt trips. The inheritance is significant enough that she might take formal action. What kind of action? She might claim undue influence, suggesting you manipulated your grandfather. Or she might argue he wasn't of sound mind when he updated his will. He was perfectly lucid, I protested. I believe you. And the medical records will likely support that. But we should be prepared. Following Samantha's advice, I started recording phone calls, legal in our state with one-party consent, and saving all messages and emails. I installed security cameras at my apartment after finding my mother's car parked outside one evening. The emotional toll was immense, but Ethan's support kept me grounded. Your grandfather saw something in you, he reminded me during a particularly low moment. The strength to handle this. Trust his judgment. His words echoed in my mind when, 3 weeks after the will reading, I received a text from my mother that would change everything. Family meeting tomorrow at 3. Time to resolve this situation once and for all. Be there. The text message sat on my phone screen like a landmine. Family meeting tomorrow at 3. Time to resolve this situation once and for all. Be there. No please, no question mark, just a command. Typically Patricia. I showed it to Ethan over dinner that night. She's planning something, I said, pushing my pasta around the plate. This isn't just another guilt session. Ethan took my phone, studying the message. Are you going to go? I don't know. The thought of another confrontation made my stomach twist. Part of me wants to ignore it. Another part feels like I need to face this head-on or it'll never end. What does Samantha think? I'd forwarded the message to my lawyer as soon as I received it. She's concerned. Says it has the feel of an ambush. Ethan reached across the table, taking my hand. Then don't go alone. I'll come with you. No, I said firmly, surprising even myself with my certainty. If I bring you, they'll say I'm hiding behind my boyfriend. This needs to be me facing my family. Then at least have Samantha on standby. It was good advice. That night, I called Samantha and briefed her on the situation. This timing isn't coincidental, she noted. The 30-day period to contest the will expires next week. I hadn't even considered that. You think they're planning some last-minute legal challenge? Possibly. Or trying to pressure you into a voluntary agreement before that deadline passes. Her voice turned thoughtful. Amber, do you have any documentation of your grandfather's intentions? Beyond the will itself. Like what? Letters, recordings, witnesses to conversations where he discussed his estate plans? I thought about it. Not specifically about the inheritance. But there's George. George Harmon had been my grandfather's best friend for over 40 years. They'd played golf every Thursday, rain or shine, until Grandpa's health made it impossible. I hadn't spoken to him since the funeral. I'll call him, I decided. He might know something. George agreed to meet me for coffee the next morning. At 78, he still had the straight posture and direct gaze of the retired Marine he was. He enveloped me in a bear hug when I arrived at the cafe. "You look like him around the eyes," he said gruffly, emotion briefly crossing his weathered face. "Harold would be proud of how you're handling yourself." "You know about the situation?" He snorted. "Everyone who knew Harold knows. He spent years worrying about what would happen after he was gone." This was news to me. "What do you mean?" George stirred his black coffee thoughtfully. "Your grandfather made his fortune through hard work and smart decisions. Watching Patricia squander everything he gave her broke his heart." "Did he tell you he was leaving everything to me?" "Not specifically. But about a year ago, he asked me a hypothetical question. If I had to choose between giving my money to someone who'd waste it or someone who'd use it wisely, what would I do?" George smiled sadly. We both knew who he was talking about. I swallowed hard. Mom thinks I manipulated him. Harold wasn't a man who could be manipulated, George stated flatly. He was stubborn as a mule and twice as smart. If he left you his estate, it's because that's exactly what he wanted to do. Do you know if he kept any records or letters explaining his decision? George's expression changed subtly. As a matter of fact, he reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew an envelope. He gave me this about 3 months before he passed. Said if there was ever any question about his wishes, I should give it to you. My hands trembled as I took the envelope. Inside was a letter, handwritten in my grandfather's neat script, dated just after his diagnosis. It detailed his reasoning for the inheritance decision, his concerns about my mother's financial irresponsibility, and his confidence in my judgment. The final paragraph brought tears to my eyes. "Amber, if you're reading this, it means my fears about Patricia's reaction were justified. Stand firm. This decision wasn't made lightly or in haste, but after years of watching both of you make choices about money. My legacy isn't just financial. It's about values. You're the only one who truly shares them. I love you all, but you're the only one I trust." I carefully folded the letter and returned it to the envelope. "Thank you for keeping this." "There's more," George said. Harold kept a journal the last few years. Documented every loan to Patricia, every conversation about money. It's in his safe at the house. I haven't gone through his personal things yet, I admitted. It's been too hard. Might be time, especially before this family meeting. He reached across the table, his hand steady on mine. "And Amber? Don't go alone tomorrow." After saying goodbye to George, I called Samantha again. This time, we developed a real plan. "I'll be in my car outside the house," she decided. "If anything feels wrong, text me the word now and I'll come in. And if they try to pressure me into signing something, don't sign anything. Period. No matter what they say, what they threaten, or how they make you feel. Any document can wait for proper legal review." That afternoon, I drove to my grandfather's house, my house now, though I hadn't moved in. It felt strange using my key, walking through the quiet rooms where so many family memories lived. In his study, I found the safe behind the painting of his first store, just where he'd always kept it. The combination was my birth date, something only I would know he'd use. Inside, among insurance policies and property deeds, was a leather-bound journal. As George had said, it contained meticulous records of my mother's financial requests and my grandfather's increasingly reluctant responses. The final entry was dated just weeks before his death. "Gave Patricia $15,000 today for what she claims are Jason's college application fees. Ridiculous amount, but I'm too tired to argue. This will be the last time. Arrangements are finalized with Peterson. Amber will face challenges, but she has what Patricia never developed: strength of character. I pray I've made the right choice for all of them. I photographed the journal entries and sent them to Samantha, who responded immediately. This is exactly what we needed. Bring the journal tomorrow, but don't show it unless absolutely necessary. That night, preparing for the meeting, I felt a strange calm settle over me. For the first time since this all began, I wasn't questioning my grandfather's decision or my right to honor it. I was simply determined to face whatever tomorrow brought. Ethan watched me pack my documents: the will, the letter from George, the journal. "You're different tonight," he observed. "I'm done feeling guilty," I replied. "Grandpa made his choice for a reason. It's time I fully accepted the responsibility that comes with it." He kissed my forehead. "Call me the second it's over. I'll be thinking about you." "I know." I managed a small smile. "Wish me luck." "You don't need luck," he said with absolute conviction. "You have something better. You're right." As I laid out my clothes for tomorrow's confrontation, my phone chimed with one last text from my mother: "Bring your ID and banking information. We'll need it for the paperwork." The trap was set. But this time, I wouldn't be the one caught in it. The next day dawned bright and clear, almost mockingly cheerful for what I knew would be a difficult confrontation. I dressed carefully in a navy blue blazer over a simple white blouse, professional and composed, channeling my grandfather's business demeanor rather than appearing as the emotional target my family expected. Samantha called as I was preparing to leave. "Remember, stay calm no matter what they say. Emotional reactions can be used against you." "I'm ready," I assured her, though my stomach was in knots. "I'll be parked down the street. Text if you need me." My mother's house, the one I'd grown up in, looked deceptively normal as I pulled into the driveway at precisely 3 p.m. The curtains were drawn, unusual for afternoon. I took a deep breath, grabbed my leather portfolio containing the documents I'd gathered, and approached the front door. I didn't need to knock. It swung open as I reached the porch, revealing my mother's perfect hostess smile. The one that never reached her eyes. "Amber, right on time." Her voice was honey-sweet, another warning sign. She was wearing a designer dress I'd never seen before, hair freshly colored and styled. Everyone's waiting in the living room. The atmosphere inside was suffocating. Rachel and Jason sat stiffly on the sofa, neither meeting my eyes. Craig stood by the fireplace, arms crossed, watching me with undisguised hostility. But what confirmed my suspicions were the two strangers, middle-aged men in expensive suits, seated in the armchairs usually reserved for family. "Amber," my mother gestured grandly, "this is Mr. Wilson and Mr. Daniels. They're helping us sort out this unfortunate situation." I nodded politely but didn't offer my hand. "I wasn't told this would involve lawyers." "Not lawyers, exactly," my mother corrected smoothly. "Just advisors to help with the paperwork. Please sit down." The only available seat was a hard-backed chair positioned to face everyone else. An interrogation setup, if I'd ever seen one. I took it without comment, placing my portfolio on my lap. "Would you like some coffee?" My mother was playing the perfect hostess, another act I recognized from childhood gatherings where appearances mattered more than actual feelings. "No, thank you. I'd like to understand the purpose of this meeting." Mr. Wilson cleared his throat, leaning forward with practiced concern. "Amber, your family is very worried about the burden that's been placed on you. Managing a substantial estate is complex and stressful, especially for someone your age. I appreciate the concern, but I've been working in financial management for 7 years," I replied evenly. "I'm quite capable." "Of course you are, sweetheart," my mother interjected with a patronizing smile. "But this is about family unity. Your grandfather would have wanted us all to benefit. If that were true, he would have written his will differently." Rachel spoke up, her voice trembling in what I recognized as her theater voice. She'd done community productions since high school. "Amber, you know Grandpa wasn't thinking clearly at the end. The medication, the pain, He wasn't himself. He was lucid until the final week, I countered. The will was updated 6 months before that. Mr. Daniels, the other advisor, opened a leather briefcase. We've prepared a simple solution that respects your grandfather's wishes while ensuring family harmony. My mother beamed at him gratefully. They've been so helpful, Amber. This way, everyone wins. What exactly are you proposing? I asked, though I already knew. A voluntary redistribution, Mr. Wilson explained, removing documents from his own briefcase. You would transfer the business holdings and investment accounts to your mother as the most experienced family member while retaining a generous portion for yourself, say, 20%. I almost laughed. And the real estate properties? Those would be liquidated, with proceeds divided among all family members. Mr. Daniels continued smoothly. Your brother has college expenses approaching, and your sister has medical needs. I looked at Jason, who squirmed uncomfortably. What medical needs does Rachel have? That's private, my mother snapped, her pleasant facade cracking slightly. Craig stepped forward. Look, Amber, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. These gentlemen have also prepared documents to contest the will if necessary. On what grounds? I kept my voice steady. Undue influence, Mr. Wilson stated. Your grandfather was elderly and ill. You spent an unusual amount of time alone with him. A judge might find that concerning. The accusation stung exactly as intended. My mother pressed the advantage. No one wants a messy court battle, Amber. Think about what that would do to Grandpa's reputation to have his mental capacity questioned in public records. I felt a momentary wave of doubt. Would Grandpa want his private affairs dragged through court? The self-doubt must have shown on my face because my mother's expression turned triumphant. We're just asking you to do the right thing, she continued, nodding to Mr. Wilson, who slid a thick document across the coffee table toward me. Sign this today, and we can put this unfortunate situation behind us. We'll still be a family. Jason finally spoke, his voice small. Please, Amber. Mom says we might lose the house if this doesn't get resolved. The manipulation was so transparent it restored my resolve. May I see the documents? Mr. Daniels passed them over with a satisfied smile. Take your time. It's a standard transfer of assets. Everything's clearly labeled. I accepted the papers, my expression neutral as I flipped through the first few pages. As I suspected, it was far from standard. It was a complete surrender of everything my grandfather had built, with nothing but vague promises in return. The room fell silent as I continued reading, tension building with each passing minute. My mother fidgeted with her new bracelet, another recent purchase, I noted, while Rachel whispered something to Craig. Finally, I closed the document and looked up. 5 pairs of eyes watched me expectantly. Well, my mother prompted. Do you need a pen? I smiled then, not the anxious, people-pleasing smile they were accustomed to seeing from me, but my grandfather's smile, the one he wore when closing a particularly advantageous business deal. Before I make any decisions, I said calmly, I'd like to understand something. Mom, when did you put a deposit down on the house in Naples? Her face paled visibly. What are you talking about? Craig mentioned it during our last phone call. He said you put a deposit down 6 months ago when Grandpa's doctor gave you his timeline. Rachel shot Craig a furious look. He cleared his throat awkwardly. I never said that. I recorded the call, I replied simply, just as I've documented every threat, every manipulation attempt, and every lie about financial hardship while you've been shopping for luxury items. Mr. Wilson straightened his tie nervously. Ms. Matthews, family disputes can get emotional. Let's focus on the documents. Yes, let's, I agreed, reaching for my portfolio. I have some documents of my own. That was when my mother stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. You're trying to steal what should rightfully be mine. Like you stole from Grandpa? I asked quietly, opening my portfolio. I never. January 15th, last year. You told him you needed $30,000 for Jason's medical treatments. Jason wasn't sick. The money went to your cruise and Craig's golf membership. I extracted the journal entry documenting this, along with a photo I'd found of my mother on that very cruise, posted to Instagram with the caption, "Best birthday gift ever." #blessed. Mr. Wilson and Mr. Daniels exchanged uncomfortable glances. May 8th, you claimed Rachel needed emergency dental surgery. $20,000. Rachel was in Cancun that weekend. She posted the pictures herself. Rachel had the grace to look ashamed. I laid out document after document, calmly and methodically exposing years of financial manipulation. Grandpa kept records of everything, Mom. Every lie, every manipulated loan, every broken promise to repay. My mother's face had transformed from shock to fury. How dare you? After everything I've done for you. Like using the money Grandpa gave you for my college tuition on your spa retreats? That's in here too. The advisors were now looking distinctly uncomfortable. Mr. Wilson leaned toward my mother, whispering urgently. She waved him off. You ungrateful little. I interjected calmly, this meeting is over. I stood, gathering my documents. Unless you'd like me to call in my actual lawyer, who's waiting outside. She's particularly interested in these gentlemen who are presenting themselves as legal advisors while pressuring me to sign documents under false pretenses. Mr. Daniels closed his briefcase hurriedly. Mrs. Carter, you didn't mention any existing litigation. There isn't any, I clarified. Yet, the implied threat hung in the air. My mother's carefully constructed plan was collapsing around her, and the rage in her eyes was unlike anything I'd seen before. This isn't over, she hissed. Actually, it is. I picked up their document and handed it back. I won't be signing this, or any variation of it. Grandpa made his wishes clear, and I intend to honor them. He was my father, she nearly screamed. Everything he built should have been mine. That's exactly why it isn't, I replied softly. He built it to last, Mom. Not to be squandered. As I turned to leave, Jason suddenly stood. Amber, wait. Everyone froze. Jason had been the silent observer throughout this confrontation, caught between loyalty to our mother and what he knew was right. I'm sorry, he said, his voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. I didn't know about any of this. The lies, the manipulation. I just thought. He looked at our mother, pain evident in his expression. I thought Amber was being selfish. But it's not true, is it, Mom? Patricia's expression hardened. Sit down, Jason. No. His hands were shaking, but his voice remained steady. I don't want any part of this. To everyone's shock, he walked across the room to stand beside me. I'm leaving with Amber. Craig started forward threateningly. You ungrateful little. I'd be careful about what you say next, I interrupted, holding up my phone. This entire conversation is being recorded. That stopped him cold. The advisors were already inching toward the door, sensing the legal quicksand they'd wandered into. I looked at my mother one last time, feeling an unexpected wave of pity beneath my anger. Goodbye, Mom. With Jason beside me, I walked out of the house that had once been my home, leaving behind the trap that had been set for me, a trap that had caught its creators instead. As Jason and I stepped onto the porch, the front door slammed behind us with such force that the porch light rattled. I flinched but kept walking toward my car, where Samantha was already emerging, alerted by my prearranged signal text. Are you okay? She asked, eyeing Jason uncertainly. This is my brother, I explained. He's coming with us. Jason looked between us, confusion evident on his face. Who are you? Samantha Reed, Amber's attorney. She extended her hand professionally. I take it the meeting didn't go as your mother planned? A hysterical laugh bubbled up from somewhere deep inside me. You could say that. We didn't have time for more explanations. The front door burst open again, revealing my mother, face contorted with rage. Jason, get back in this house right now. Jason stiffened beside me but didn't turn around. I can't, Mom. Not after what I just heard. They're manipulating you, she shrieked. Everything Amber said was a lie. Samantha stepped forward slightly. Mrs. Carter, I strongly advise you to go back inside. Any further harassment will be documented and may impact future proceedings. Who the hell are you? My mother demanded. I'm Ms. Matthews' legal counsel. And unlike your advisors, I actually am a licensed attorney. That gave my mother pause, though her eyes still burned with fury. Behind her, I could see Mr. Wilson and Mr. Daniels hurrying to their cars, briefcases clutched tightly, rats abandoning the sinking ship. This isn't over, she repeated, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. It is, Samantha countered firmly. Any attempt to contest the will now would be seen as vexatious litigation given the evidence Amber has compiled. You'd be risking court costs and potential sanctions. My mother's gaze shifted to Jason. And you. Don't bother coming back if you leave with her. Jason visibly flinched, but held his ground. Fine. Without another word, my mother retreated inside, slamming the door once more. The three of us stood in charged silence for a moment before Samantha spoke. Let's get out of here. We can talk somewhere else. 20 minutes later, we were seated in a quiet corner of a cafe several miles away. Jason stared into his untouched coffee, shell-shocked. I can't believe she just disowned me, just like that. She's bluffing, I said, though I wasn't entirely convinced. She'll calm down eventually. You don't know that, he countered, finally looking up. You didn't see how she was after the will reading when you weren't around. It was like she became obsessed. The only thing she talked about was getting her money back. Samantha, who had been making notes on her tablet, interjected gently. Jason, did your mother discuss specific plans for the inheritance? Beyond general statements about family sharing. He hesitated, loyalty warring with his new understanding. She had a whole list. The house in Naples was just the beginning. She wanted to buy into some exclusive country club, get a boat, renovate the entire house. And my college tuition? I prompted softly. Was that ever mentioned? His eyes dropped back to his coffee. Once. I asked about it specifically. She said you were smart enough to get scholarships and that you'd probably try to take over Grandpa's business anyway, so you didn't need help. The casual cruelty of it stung, but didn't surprise me. What about your college plans? She kept saying not to worry, that once she had control of the money, everything would be taken care of. A bitter laugh escaped him. I believed her. God, I was so stupid. You weren't stupid, I reassured him. You trusted your mother. That's normal. Samantha cleared her throat. I hate to interrupt, but we need to discuss next steps. The immediate crisis is averted, but we should prepare for potential fallout. I nodded, shifting into the practical mindset my grandfather had cultivated in me. What do you recommend? First, file the letter from George and the journal as supplementary documentation with the probate court. It strengthens your position should there be any challenge. She made another note on her tablet. Second, consider a restraining order if the harassment continues. A restraining order against my own mother? The thought was surreal. Only if necessary, she qualified. But the recorded threats should be taken seriously. Jason looked up sharply. What threats? I hadn't told him about Craig's late-night calls or the time I'd found my mother watching my apartment. Some protective instinct had made me shield him from the worst of it. It's been intense, I admitted. But I'm hoping today's confrontation will be the end of it. Samantha looked skeptical but didn't push. At minimum, change your locks and security codes. And Jason, she turned to my brother, you'll need somewhere safe to stay. The reality of his situation seemed to hit him all at once. I can't go home. I don't have anywhere else to go. Yes, you do, I said without hesitation. You'll stay with me. The relief on his face was immediate and heartbreaking. Are you sure? Absolutely. Despite everything, he was still my little brother. My apartment has a pull-out couch with your name on it. Samantha smiled for the first time since the confrontation. That's settled then. Now, Amber, we should discuss your grandfather's estate. Have you given any thought to how you want to proceed? The question caught me off guard. I'd been so focused on defending my inheritance that I hadn't fully considered what I would actually do with it. Grandpa wanted me to continue his legacy, I said slowly. Not just preserve it, but build on it. The hardware stores are still profitable, Samantha noted. But they're facing increasing competition from big box retailers. You might consider diversification. Jason leaned forward, sudden interest replacing his dejection. Grandpa always talked about expanding into eco-friendly building supplies. He said it was the future, but he didn't have the energy to overhaul the business model. I looked at my brother with surprise. I didn't know you paid attention to his business talks. He shrugged, a hint of embarrassment coloring his cheeks. I didn't understand most of it, but I liked listening to him get excited about ideas. Something clicked into place. Jason, what are you planning to study in college? Business administration, he replied, with a focus on sustainable enterprise. Why? I exchanged a glance with Samantha, who seemed to read my thoughts and nodded slightly in approval. Because, I said, a plan forming as I spoke, I think Grandpa would want his legacy to include both of us. Jason's eyes widened. What are you saying? I'm saying that while I won't sign over the inheritance to Mom, I do want to share it in a way that honors Grandpa's values. I reached across the table, taking his hand. How would you feel about an internship at Matthews Hardware while you're in college? Learn the business from the ground up, like Grandpa taught me. Are you serious? Hope flickered across his face. Completely serious. And if you prove yourself, which I know you will, there could be a place for you in the company after graduation. But what about Rachel? And Mom? He asked, though I could tell he was already imagining the possibility. I sighed. Rachel made her choice. As for Mom, I won't enable her self-destructive financial habits, but I won't abandon her either. We can set up a modest trust with strict conditions. Samantha nodded approvingly. A properly structured trust would prevent misuse while providing security. We can build in educational provisions for Jason and even Rachel if she ever changes her mind. For the first time since this whole ordeal began, I felt a sense of clarity and purpose. This wasn't just about honoring my grandfather's wishes anymore. It was about carrying forward his values in a way that could heal our family, even if that healing took years. So what happens now? Jason asked. Now, I replied with newfound confidence, we build something that would make Grandpa proud. The rest of the afternoon passed in a flurry of practical arrangements. Samantha helped Jason create a list of personal items to retrieve from our mother's house, with a police escort as a precaution. I called Ethan, who immediately offered to help Jason settle into my apartment. By evening, sitting in my living room with Jason and Ethan, I felt an unexpected sense of peace. The worst confrontation was behind us. The path forward wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, it felt clear. I just realized something, Jason said suddenly. Today's the anniversary of Grandpa's business opening. 47 years ago. I glanced at the calendar, surprised I hadn't noticed. You're right. Do you think he planned it this way? Jason wondered. Setting all this in motion to come to a head today? Ethan chuckled. From what you've told me about him, that sounds exactly like something he would do. I smiled, remembering my grandfather's meticulous nature, his belief that timing was everything in business and in life. Maybe he did. His final lesson to us. Later that night, after Jason had settled into the pull-out couch and Ethan had gone home, I sat alone in my bedroom, reading through my grandfather's journal again. On the final page, after the last entry, I noticed something I'd missed before, a small note in the margin, written in his distinctive handwriting. The true measure of wealth isn't what you have, but what you do with it. Make it matter, Amber. I traced the words with my finger, feeling his presence as strongly as if he were sitting beside me. I will, Grandpa, I whispered. I promise. The weeks following the confrontation marked the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with both challenges and unexpected blessings. The initial aftermath was predictably difficult. My mother launched a brief, furious campaign of text messages alternating between vicious accusations and tearful pleas. When those failed to move me, she resorted to social media, posting thinly veiled attacks about ungrateful children and family betrayal. I maintained my silence publicly, though each barb stung. Ethan reminded me daily that responding would only feed the drama. "She wants a reaction," he'd say, holding me when the hurt became overwhelming. "Don't give her the satisfaction." The hardware stores required immediate attention. Without Grandpa's steady hand, some managers had grown complacent, and sales were beginning to slip. I took a leave of absence from my marketing job and immersed myself in the business operations, visiting each location and learning the specific challenges they faced. Jason accompanied me whenever his class schedule allowed, soaking up knowledge with an enthusiasm that reminded me of myself at his age. Watching him interact with employees, asking insightful questions about inventory management and customer retention, I saw glimpses of our grandfather, the same analytical mind, the same genuine interest in people. "You're a natural at this," I told him after a particularly productive meeting with suppliers. He ducked his head, pleased but embarrassed by the praise. "I just remember things Grandpa said. It helps me know what questions to ask." "That's exactly what makes you good at it." 3 weeks after the confrontation, Rachel reached out unexpectedly. She asked to meet at a cafe halfway between our homes, neutral territory. I arrived first, claiming a corner table where I could watch the door, still wary of ambushes after everything that had happened. She entered tentatively, looking smaller somehow without our mother's commanding presence beside her. The designer clothes and perfect makeup remained, but something in her demeanor had changed. "Thank you for coming," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. "I was surprised you called." She fiddled with her napkin, avoiding my eyes. "Mom doesn't know I'm here. She'd be furious." "How is she?" I asked, genuinely concerned despite everything. "Angry. Hurt. Drinking more than usual." Rachel finally looked up. "She's selling the house. Says she can't afford the mortgage payments anymore." I had expected to feel vindicated by this news. Instead, I felt a complicated sadness. "Where will she go?" "Craig's sister has a rental property. It's smaller, but nice enough." She hesitated. "Jason's room is still untouched." She won't admit it, but I think she's hoping he'll come back. "Has she reached out to him?" Rachel shook her head. Her pride won't let her. "Not yet, anyway." She took a deep breath. "I owe you an apology, Amber. I said terrible things. I believed Mom when she said you'd manipulated Grandpa. You were protecting her," I acknowledged. "I understand loyalty." "It wasn't just loyalty." Her voice dropped. "I was jealous. You were always Grandpa's favorite, and I resented that." When the will was read, she trailed off, blinking back tears. It felt like final confirmation. I finished for her. She nodded. But these past weeks, watching Mom spiral, seeing how she's handling things, I've been thinking about why Grandpa made the choice he did. And I get it now. This admission, so unexpected, left me momentarily speechless. "I'm not asking for money," Rachel clarified quickly. "That's not why I wanted to meet. I miss my sister. And I miss Jason. Mom's determined to cut you both off forever, but I can't do that." I reached across the table, offering my hand. After a moment's hesitation, she took it. "Family is complicated," I said. "But it doesn't have to be all or nothing." That meeting marked the beginning of a careful reconciliation with Rachel. We agreed to keep our contact private for now, protecting her from our mother's anger while leaving the door open for eventual healing. It was a small step, but a significant one. Meanwhile, the legal aspects of the inheritance were finally settling. Samantha helped me establish 3 separate trusts, an educational fund for Jason, a modest monthly stipend for my mother. Despite her continued hostility, I couldn't bring myself to cut her off completely. And a charitable foundation in my grandfather's name focused on entrepreneurship education for underprivileged youth. The foundation particularly would have pleased him. Throughout his life, he'd mentored young people with business aspirations but limited resources, offering jobs, advice, and occasionally financial backing. Formalizing this support into a structured program felt like the perfect tribute. 6 months after Grandpa's passing, I finally moved into his house, our house now. It was a practical decision. My apartment was too small for both Jason and me long-term, and maintaining 2 residences made little financial sense. Still, those first nights sleeping in the master bedroom, surrounded by subtle reminders of his presence, were emotionally charged. I kept most rooms as they were but converted his study into a shared office for Jason and me. We hung his portrait above the fireplace, his kind eyes seemingly approving of our changes. The business began to thrive under our combined attention. Jason's research into eco-friendly building materials opened new market opportunities, while my marketing background helped position Matthews Hardware as the progressive alternative to impersonal chain stores. We began a modest expansion, opening a specialized green building showroom that attracted younger homeowners and environmentally conscious contractors. 1 year after the confrontation, I received an unexpected email from my mother. The subject line simply read, "Truce." The message inside was brief. "Amber, I've spent a year being angry. It hasn't changed anything except making me more bitter. Rachel tells me the business is doing well. She says Jason is thriving in college. I miss my children. If you're willing, I'd like to talk. No lawyers. No demands. Just talk. Mom." I read it multiple times, searching for hidden manipulations, but finding none. After discussing it with Jason, Rachel, and Ethan, I agreed to meet her at a restaurant, with Ethan nearby just in case. She arrived on time, looking older than I remembered, but more composed than during our last encounter. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by a simple blouse and slacks. Her expression when she saw me was guarded, but not hostile. "Thank you for coming," she said, the exact words Rachel had used months earlier. "How are you, Mom?" "Managing." She offered a small, tight smile. "The rental is actually nice. Less to clean. Craig and I." She hesitated. "Craig and I are taking some time apart." This was news. "I'm sorry to hear that." She shrugged. "It's been coming for a while. Your grandfather used to say Craig brought out the worst in me. I'm starting to think he was right about that, too." The acknowledgement, however indirect, that Grandpa had been right about anything related to money was startling progress. "I've been seeing someone," she continued, eyes fixed on her water glass. "A therapist, I mean. Rachel's idea. It's helping me understand some things about myself. About why I've always felt so empty no matter how much I acquired." Our conversation that day wasn't a magical reconciliation. Years of dysfunctional patterns couldn't be undone in a single lunch. But it was a beginning. She asked thoughtful questions about the business, listened without interrupting when I explained the foundation, and looked genuinely pleased when I showed her pictures of Jason's Dean's List certificate. Before we parted, she said something that stayed with me. "Harold would be proud of you, Amber. Not because of what you've done with the money, but because of who you've become despite how hard I made it for you." It was the most honest thing she'd ever said to me. The path toward family healing remains long and uncertain. Some days bring progress, others trigger old patterns and hurts. My mother and I maintain careful boundaries, but the open hostility has faded. She even attended the grand opening of our newest store location, standing quietly in the back during my speech but staying for cake afterward. Jason graduates next year, ready to step into a full-time role in the company. Rachel, inspired perhaps by the foundation's work, has begun volunteering at a women's shelter and talking about going back to school for social work. And Ethan, well, The ring he placed on my finger last month suggests we'll be building our future together. As for me, I've finally made peace with my grandfather's choice. The inheritance wasn't just about money or even about business acumen. It was about values, about building rather than consuming, about using resources to create something meaningful that outlasts us. In his journal's final entry, Grandpa wrote that he believed I had what my mother never developed: strength of character. For a long time, that felt like too heavy a compliment to accept. Now I understand it wasn't meant as praise, but as recognition of something he'd observed over years of watching me grow and make choices, often difficult ones. Standing up to family pressure was the hardest thing I've ever done. But through that painful process, I discovered my own capacity for both firmness and compassion, for honoring the past while building something new. That's the real inheritance, not the money or the business, but the understanding that true wealth lies in what we create, what we share, and what we leave behind for others. If you're facing a similar family conflict over money or inheritance, remember that standing your ground doesn't mean closing your heart. Boundaries aren't walls, they're bridges that allow healthy relationships to form. Share your experiences in the comments below. How have you navigated family financial conflicts? Have you found ways to honor both your own needs and family relationships? Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about navigating life's challenging moments, and hit that like button if this journey resonated with you. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, the most valuable legacies aren't measured in dollars, but in the lives we touch and the good we create.